Welcome to another video here, guys. Now, are you thinking of purchasing a vehicle, or maybe you purchase your vehicle and there's some things you regret? Today, I'm going to discuss my top 10 tips for buying a vehicle in your 20s, because at this time is generally when we start to think about buying our first car, and there's a lot to learn. It's a very big purchase. So I'm going to go over the top 10 mistakes that I see so you don't make them and you can have a successful buying experience. So I've been selling cars for almost a decade now, and I do all sorts of financing and all sorts of sales, and I've seen so many mistakes that young people make, and I don't want you to make those mistakes. So let's dive right into it here, guys, with mistake number one: buying a car above your needs. What do I mean by this? Well, you're young, you're in your 20s, you might not need such a high-end vehicle, you might not need a Mercedes, you might not need an SUV, you might not need that Lexus, and buying above your needs can be a big financial burden as you progress and grow throughout your 20s. So if you buy a vehicle that maybe requires premium fuel or has a high cost of operation, you might regret it down the line, and it might end up costing you more money. And that's money you can use to start investing, you can use to pay bills and other expenses. So make sure you understand what your needs are and try not to buy above that. Number two kind of flows right with number one, but that's buying above your income level. So I see this all the time where people make $2,000 a month and they tell me they can afford like an $800 car payment. And it doesn't make sense. Typically, you want to stay in the 10 to 15% of your income range when you buy a car. So basically, if your income is around $2,000 per month, you don't want to have an above $200 car payment. So keep in mind, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have oil changes and operation costs and just other things that come up. So make sure you stay within your income range. So by all means, if you're making 10 grand a month in your 20s, then maybe you can afford a higher end car, but try not to buy above your income and stay within that 10 to 15% range. Number three is not thinking about the future. So you want to think long term when you're buying a car. You just don't want to think short term. So where are you at in your life? What places will you be going? Where do you work? Are you going to be getting a new job? Or is this your permanent career? Think about what the next 5 to 10 year scenario is going to look at. Don't go and buy a two-door car if you're planning on having kids and things like that. So think long term and think about the future. Do I plan on having a family, or do I plan on moving somewhere where the climate changes? Think of the whole picture and think long term. Number four, this is a huge mistake that I see all the time, and almost everybody who does it ends up regretting it. So don't let this be you. But number four is co-signing for a friend, or co-signing for someone, or getting a co-signer to help you. It just doesn't make sense when you're young. I see this all the time where girlfriends will co-sign for their boyfriend, or boyfriend will co-sign for their girlfriend, and then 8 months later they break up, and then they come back and they say, how can we get this co-signer off the loan? And they can't. They're stuck with that. So make sure if you're co-signing for somebody, like, you are committed to that person probably for the rest of their life, and you trust that person to the fullest. You trust them to make payments, because co-signing has ruined a lot of things. It also adds to your debt to service ratio. So when you co-sign for someone, their debt becomes your debt. And if you're applying for even your own car or future loans, mortgages, and things like that, someone is going to look at the debt that you have, and you're not going to get approved for as much as you can if you've co-signed for someone. Number five is something that I'm really passionate about, and that's just buying a truck. Everybody wants to have that truck, your truck, my truck. I'm getting my truck. There's so many young guys out there who just want a truck for the sake of having a truck and acting like they're a big deal, when the truck isn't really a need. They don't need a truck. Unless that truck is making you income, there's no point of owning a truck. If you have maybe motorbikes that you need to haul, or dirt bikes that you carry around, you're in that competitive scene, or you have a need for the truck, then by all means, go out and buy the truck. But if there's no need to have a truck, if you're just doing dump runs, is the one I hear all the time. People say, I do so many dump runs and I need a truck. that, you can figure that out a different way, because trucks generally have very high price tag, very high payments, and they use more gas. So you just have an overall higher cost of ownership when you buy a truck, and it can really make a dent in your finances and your savings by costing you so much in the long run. Number 6, I see this a lot with young guys, especially males, and that's modding your car or modifying your car. It doesn't make sense, especially when you're young. A lot of people will buy a new car and then they'll spend like 15 to 20 grand in mods, and then they'll come back to us to trade it in, and they'll say, oh, I bought this car for 30 grand. I put 15 grand of mods on it, so my car's worth 45 grand. That doesn't make sense, and it doesn't work like that. Your car actually is worth less when you mod it, unless you keep the original parts and you put them back on your car and then you sell your mods privately. That's really the only way that makes sense, but most people don't do that. So this is why modding your car doesn't make sense, because when you mod your car, you buy things that you want specifically for your car, whatever it may be, whether it's music, tunes in the engine, things like that. Whatever way you modify the car, that's specific to you. And it's very rare to find that one person that sees your car and says, oh, all those mods that you put on the car are the mods that I want in my car, so I'm gonna buy that car and pay you extra for all the mods. It doesn't work like that. Nobody wants the same mods that you do, and having a car that's modded is much harder to sell down the road when you go to trade it in. Maybe you do it in your early 20s, and then when you're 25, you're trying to trade the car in, and it has all these modifications and color changes to it, and nobody wants to buy it. It really lowers the resale value of the car when you modify it. So be careful when you mod your car. Number 7, moving along, and this is one I see because I'm a finance manager, and applying for finances online is a big mistake. I see people that apply for financing online all the time. They see these ads online about buying a car, and they just apply for the financing, and they do this like 4 different websites, and then they have 4 different websites checking their credit. They have 4 different websites submitting them off to the bank and trying to get them approved, and it really hurts their credit, because when we look at their list of how many places they've shopped their credit around, the list can become pretty big very fast. And a lot of people don't understand when they apply for these finance applications online that dealer or wherever they're applying, or that company, is going to check their credit, and it's not going to do them a good. So my advice is, do not apply for financing until you find the car that you want to buy. And if you think your credit is iffy, or you have questions about your credit, you're not sure if you'll get approved, then I would speak to your bank first, or check your credit online through your online banking. There's lots of ways to check your credit through your online banking, and then that will give you an idea of what you're going to qualify for. But applying to 5 different websites online with no idea what kind of car you're gonna be able to purchase doesn't make sense, and it only worsens your case when you go to actually get the car you want. Moving along here in line 8, and this is one that I see all the time. Mistake number 8 is not test driving or inspecting the car thoroughly when you buy it. I have so many people, and I ask them, hey, when do you want to come check out the car? And it's mostly the younger generation that does this. When do you want to check out the car? And they say, oh, I'm okay, I just prefer to buy the car through text message. And I say, okay, you want to buy a car through text message? That's fine. That's not what I would do. But if you want to buy a car through text message, that's okay, guys. You're not ordering a pizza here. You're buying a car. You want to go, take it out, test drive it, inspect the car, maybe bring it to a trusted mechanic if you want to have someone look at it under the hood and check it out mechanically. I would recommend that, especially if you're buying a used car. But don't buy the car sight unseen, or do not skip the test drive. It's very important. You don't know when you're test driving it, or if you don't test drive it, you won't know how the seats feel, how comfortable it is. Maybe it hurts your back when you're sitting down. Maybe it doesn't have enough space for your kids. Maybe it doesn't fit in your garage. There's so many reasons as to why you could test drive it. We could just make a whole video on the importance of test drive. So make sure you test drive the car. Make sure you get on your hands and knees, look under the hood, look underneath the car, bring it to a secondary mechanic if you can, check out the tires, check out everything with the car, and make sure you're 100% certain that the car is in quality condition. Number 9 is underestimating the overall cost of ownership for a car. So this is big here, guys. Most people, especially when they're young, they think very short term. They think, okay, these are the car payments and that's it. And they don't see the total amount of the vehicle after the interest, after everything that they buy, after their fuel and their insurance, and after their oil changes and things like that. So some people think, hey, maybe owning that Subaru WRX or the Subaru Impreza STI really is cool right now and the payments are very low, but they don't realize that their insurance is going to be very, very high. And then repairing that car is going to be even more. So keep that in mind, your overall cost of ownership. You want to think of what your insurance is going to cost. You want to think of what your maintenance is going to cost. You want to think of what your fuel efficiency is going to be, and just general repairs. And you also want to think of your resale value. It's really important to think of 5 years down the line, which car am I going to be able to sell for more? So a $5,000 Kia and a $5,000 Toyota, 5 years later, the values are going to be way different. So make sure you take in that consideration, things like resale value, and just try to calculate your overall cost of ownership. Buying a luxury vehicle like a Mercedes or a Lexus is going to have a lot higher cost of ownership than just a basic car. And really, when you're in your 20s, you really need the Lexus to drive around. Last one here, guys. This is huge. I see this a lot, not just in people in their 20s. I see this in almost people in all ages, but trading your car in too frequently and rolling in negative equity. From my experience, working in car sales and financing cars, anytime you trade your car in within like the first 2 to 3 years, you generally lose. The cars depreciate a lot faster than you can pay them off. So when you roll in negative equity from one deal to the other, your loan value is super high. So I see this all the time where people will come in and they'll try to trade their car in after year 1, after year 2, and they have maybe $5,000 of negative equity, and then they roll that into the next loan that they're buying, and then 2 years later they come back and they want to trade that car in, and then this time they're rolling not $5,000 in, they're rolling $10,000 into their next loan, and you'll never be able to get ahead of your loan because the cars depreciate a lot quicker than you can pay off your loan. So keep that in mind. If you're planning on buying a vehicle, try to think long term and don't trade it in right out of the gate unless you absolutely have to. And that's it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys don't make these mistakes in your 20s. Now, I ain't saying I'm perfect. I made some of these mistakes and I don't want you to make them. So if this video helped you, comment in the comments, give it a thumbs up. And if you guys learned anything, or there's other mistakes that you made that you didn't mention, just post them in the comments below so other people watching this video don't make this mistake. As always, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content about the automotive industry, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.